Welcome to the Norfolk Unordinary Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Johnson. I've lived here in Norfolk County for over 40 years, and together today, we're going to hear from the unordinary people who make our small towns and countryside a great place to call home. This episode of Norfolk Unordinary is brought to you by Coco Cabana Chocolate Fudge Gourmet Cafe. Follow them on Facebook and Instagram as they're always posting pictures of new and creative sweet treats. When you drop into Coco Cabana, say hello to its owner, Dave Tank, who has been serving the Port Dover community since 1995. Say hello to me too. I try to start my day at Coco's with friendly conversation and a good cup of tea. Open 7 days a week year-round. Start your morning or fuel your afternoon with a hot coffee, tea, espresso, latte, and once you see it, you'll want to grab a little sweet piece of fudge from Coco Cabana, 16 Walker Street, Port Dover, Ontario. Scot Brockbank, Port Dover, Ontario. Scott, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Dan.
Scott, I guess we're kind of neighbors, although we live on opposite sides of the bridge here in Port Dover. We're part of an awesome community here in this town, and this town is one of the awesome towns that make up Norfolk County. Scott, you're here today because I think you are rather unordinary, and so I think Norfolk County would be better to hear a bit of your story and find out what makes you the man you are here today. Scott, I'll start off by saying, Scott, you saved my life once, and you'd say, in what way? Well, you'll recall a few years back in my one of my last training rides before going out to Quebec to do Ironman Mont Tremblant, which you helped me prepare for. I called you stranded from the highway up in Collingwood, where I was up trying to do some mountain climbing on my bike, and that's hard to do around Norfolk County, but up there at that day, and I was booking down a hill. I think it was actually a mountain up there, and I was hitting in the 70 kilometers an hour, and I started to get a speed wobble on my front tire. And needless to say, my front tire barely stayed on. I was able to get off the bike, and from the side of the road, I called Scott, and Scott, you run a cycle business called North Shore Cycle, and here out of Port Dover, and I called you like in fight or flight, full blown physiological stress and anxiety, and you over Facebook Messenger video walked me through fixing my bike. Scott, do you remember that day?
I do. And I do remember the video because I was like, wow, this is my first time actually fixing someone remotely. But
right,
little did we know that
right.
was going to become our norm.
Yeah. And so for you, you didn't actually have the mobile bike thing going, bike repair going yet at that time.
I don't think we did.
No, I don't think we did. That would have been spring of 2019.
Yeah, just before it closed the shop.
Scott, you have become a good friend of mine, and it's been an honor to get to know you over these last few years. To run with you, do some training with you, learn from you. Primarily, Scott is an excellent teacher, and he takes time to coach and help young people. Well, if I was young, maybe back then, as they are learning the sport, learning how to grow, and learning how to run, swim, or bike, or whatever. And so, Scott, welcome, and looking forward to hearing your story today. A lot of people here in Norfolk County will have heard of you. They know about you through your participation in the community of Port Dover and surrounding area, your contributions in the community, and also like your leadership. And so you are a businessman and a man of recreation and leisure. And in some way, a lot of those worlds combined for you in that what you love to do in your personal time and your hobbies. You also have businesses carved out to be able to serve the people in our community, which I think is what you actually do through your businesses. You actually serve people. You help to make them better as individuals, and the sum effect of that is that you help to make the community better. So, Scott, you live here in Port Dover, and I'm going to kind of start to maybe not the end of the story, but the part of the story that people in Norfolk County would know is that Scott lives here in Port Dover with his wife Nancy and his daughters. And you are heavily involved in the run, cycle, swim community here in Port Dover. That would include North Shore Aquatics and North Shore Athletics. Scott, what are the difference between those two things?
Some I make money at, and some I created a community around.
Okay.
And some I coach at. So the North Shore Cycle is my business, and it's a remote business. So now I started a mobile cycling repair business so that we come to your house. And it's really to take out that wait time of bringing your bike into a bike shop. And during the height of the summer, when you want to be riding, you're not waiting 2 to 3 weeks for your bike to get fixed. And it was sort of, I had a shop for 13 years and then I just shut her down. Saw the writing on the wall that a lot of people were going towards. They can't really, they buy more online, but they can't fix their stuff. So that was sort of the thinking behind it. And 3 to 4 years later, it's actually going really well, and it's doubled or tripled my business. So, and I take care of a lot more smaller communities, like out to Tilsonburg, Brantford, Paris, Delhi, which doesn't have a bike shop, Port Rowan. And then North Shore Aquatics is a coaching business I have to get people interested in swimming or take their swimming to the next level for triathlon and outdoor swimming in the lake. And that's sort of my love. That it started off running for sure, but swimming has really taken over, and I really do love to promote the swimming side of my life.
And so what planet are you from, Scott? Because you are from planet Earth, but Scott, you would know that I'm not a lover of swimming. I swim because, like most other triathletes, I have no choice. And in fact, Scott, I was a beneficiary of you in 2018 and 19. I said, "Hey, Scott, I'm gonna do Mont Tremblant, and I've got to be able to swim 3.8 kilometers and then ride 180 and then run a marathon." So, Scott, I know how to swim, but I also am always injured. I know how to swim, but it feels like just the hardest thing I've ever done in my life for the entire time, and there's no way that this is right. This has to be easier. I have to learn how to swim. And you and me hit the YMCA in Brantford 5:30 a.m. for a few weeks, and I did a bit of a training session with Scott. And Scott, very practically, he's an excellent instructor, excellent teacher. He brought it down. He had a workout prepared, and then he joined me with it. And he just gave me 1, 2, or 3 things. I think he started with 1, and then once we got that sort of figured out, moved to a 2nd and a 3rd. Just simple things, not to become an Olympic swimmer, but to ensure that I would be able to finish the swim with as little fatigue as possible.
That's right. Efficiency is the key.
Efficiency. Your slogan was?
Slow is fast.
Slow is fast.
That's
and
right.
I thought about that a lot while I was swimming for those months, being like, that doesn't make... Scott doesn't know what he's talking about. How is slow?
And it really is. It's slow is smooth, smooth is fast.
That's it. That was it. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. And so I figured there was some unwiring and untraining that need to happen, and it worked. So that's North Shore Aquatics, and then Scott, North Shore Athletics.
That's the community. So that's what the shop was called, was North Shore Athletics, and we started back in 2007 the run community in Port Dover in Norfolk County. And it sort of grew from there through learn to run programs, and then promoting local races and just getting involved with other races and grooming our participants to start challenging themselves a little bit more, and then going towards half marathons, and then ultras eventually. But it really was just a growth through learn to run. And that community is still there. And that's where the athletic side of it comes in. So the run community has never stopped. It's just more of a social aspect now. Mm-hmm. And we still get together 3 times a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays and Saturdays. And we still promote running and promote our growth as athletes, and cheer each other on through our achievements and through our challenges. So I think that for us is... it's just a nice aspect to have that sort of backing. Whenever you sort of feel like you need to get a little motivation, it's great to see what other people are doing. And so that's
awesome.
Yeah.
Love it. So that's a bit about North Shore Cycle, the business. That's what you do. That's your income. That's your job. That's what you do. Scott is excellent. I've had him, obviously help me the day when he rescued me on a mountain. But also I've had Scott do some work on my bike. And I know when I go to see Scott, there's usually a list of other bikes he's working on, which is a good thing, right? You don't want a businessman who's got nothing to do all day and he's right there to help you out right on the second because he's got nothing else. No, Scott is busy, but he's also efficient. He uses his time well, and he gets you in and out and gets your issue resolved. So that's awesome, Scott. I love the fact that as we were getting ready to record, I learned a little bit about your backstory that probably nobody really knows. And when I first met you, I was in Port Dover, not living here at the time. I was living in Waterford, and I was in Port Dover, and I was wandering, and I looked over, and I was like, what is that? Is that a sports store in Port Dover? What is that? And I got closer, and I was like, what? Is that a triathlon store? I was like, what is this? And then I went in the door, and there's this guy at the counter, and he's eating some weird cheese or something, because I learned he was on some sort of a cheese thing. And maybe it was a butter. I don't know. It was something odd.
It's probably keto.
Keto, that's it. You were doing the keto thing, and for some reason, if you were eating cheese for lunch that day or something, I don't know. And I was just looking around this store being like, now, for me, I mean, there's no greater store in the world than to be in like a triathlon store. And normally you'd have to drive 2 hours somewhere to Toronto or whatever, an hour away to Burlington or something like that to even get something like that. So for me, I was like, wow, this is an amazing place. And then I just started asking Scott questions and sort of learn about him and learn about the business he had there and then learn about North Shore Athletics and just sort of got an idea of like, wow, there's like a running community here, like a fitness community. It's social, it's competitive as well. Like there's all kinds of mix of athletes and learn to run people and, you know, couch to 5K kind of people. And then all the way through to like high level competitive Ironman triathletes, right? And even longer distances of running and stuff. So,
we're still recreational.
Yeah, still recreational mostly, right?
We're doing this for fun more than making any money on it.
Oh,
like it's a hobby, and it's a great hobby though.
Yeah,
because there's so much discipline that has to be like personal discipline that you have to get through. And I always look at it. If you want to become a triathlete, you have to. The fourth discipline is organization. Like you have to be organized, right. Otherwise you just won't be able to do it. Like if you can't organize your day and get up on time and figure out how you're going to fit in these three disciplines and your family and friends and work and sleep and food, then you're never going to.
There you go.
Right. So it's great to have that sort of community around us where people have done smaller events or bigger events, and you can lean on them and you can ask questions and you can figure it out.
Nice. So in 2007, you had just sort of recently moved to Port Dover, and you saw this as an opportunity. Here's a town that has everything set up for itself to be a swim, bike, run, whether it's one sport standalone. People living, residents in this area could get involved in the sport. And so now I want to take us back now to your childhood and growing up a little bit to say like, there's a bit of a story in you ending up stumbling into Port Dover one day where your parents were living and visiting this town and then, you know, falling in love with it and starting some of these ventures that have made this county better for it. But take us back a little bit. So you grew up not anywhere near Norfolk County. You grew up where?
In the heart of Mississauga.
Heart of Mississauga. You said Mississauga Road.
You know what? Mississauga was a tiny town then. Like it really wasn't the metropolis that is really
true
right now. But you know, it was like 2 or 3 high schools that were fairly big. But the communities itself, like it was easy still to get around. You kind of knew everybody. It really was like a mid-sized town, but great place to grow up as a kid. Yeah.
Now it's like once you hit Hamilton, it's like. There's nothing but city until
it's insane.
Oshawa, right? It's just it almost feels from an outsider, it almost all feels like essentially the same.
Streetsville, like growing up where I was, Streetsville was like, whoa, that's like farm country. Like,
wow.
Like, why would you ever go up to Streetsville?
Wow. Something pretty significant happened in your childhood when you were 7. You were telling me about, and so tell me a little bit about that, and then tell me a little bit about life in your early years with your family and. Responsibility is a key word that you're going to hone in on in your childhood.
My mom was unfortunate and passed away when I was quite young, when I was 7. And I felt at the time like the responsibility level at that time was, as any kid, was just fun. Like just go out and hang out with your friends and play at recess and come home. And then this happened and it kind of stopped everything. And the responsibility level of just from my dad was a lot greater. Like we had to help out a little bit more around the house. And I wouldn't say a little bit more, a lot more, because he still had to raise 2 boys, and then moving up in his work and going to Toronto every day, someone had to pick up the slack, and it was up to us to do that. So, and I would think that would be the most significant point. And I would even think Nancy would say that it's been a huge point is when my mom passed away. Like as a child, like I changed and became who I am now.
Right.
Right.
So responsibility and introduce another idea of work ethic.
Yeah.
Right. You mentioned that at a young age, these things are kind of thrust upon you, and that ended up being fairly formative for you. It kind of shaped you at a young age into sort of the path that your life would take, meaning your story includes you being a guy who's fairly driven, motivated, and you recognize that work needs to be done, and you have no problem doing the work in order to be successful. And that came out of a childhood that you had to, in some ways, grow up maybe a little bit quicker than maybe you wanted to. Looking back, it would have been, but it is what it is, right?
That's right. You can't dwell. I'm sitting now, like I'm sure at some point in my life when I was 9 or 10, I was probably, you can probably go, oh, I'm so mad. But as in my 50s now, I go, that was an excellent experience. Like it really did shape who I was and push me to become a little bit like I do have a very strong work ethic, and I do push myself, and I'm very driven to not sort of sit on the sidelines and think this is it.
Yeah,
I always want to keep moving and pushing and creating and going forward all the time.
Yeah.
Like there really isn't like, and that goes with my personal life to business to everything is I'm driven. There's a fire in me and I still want to go all the time.
Now, hard question. Can you turn it off?
No. Nancy would say no.
Nancy's your wife?
That's right.
Okay.
She would obviously, and the kids would obviously say, no, he never turns it off. At 8:30, I turn it off and I go to sleep.
Very good. Do you turn it off when you're playing Pictionary with your family or Ticket to Ride or whatever other, fun board game?
Yeah. You know what? I'm not driven that way. I'm not driven. Like I can sit back and go, yeah, I don't have to win at board games. Like that's not it. I think I'm more personally driven, right? I don't have to win. Like I'm not a.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. Nice. No, that's good. Thanks, Scott, I know that's hard to share a little bit. And I think that the listener will benefit from hearing, adversity shapes and forms you, and adversity is often unexpected and not desired. And obviously there's nothing desirable about losing your mom. But thank you for sharing that. And a lot of the listeners, myself included, like we know what it's like to have hardship, right? To have a hard season and a trial coming in. And it's good to see that it shaped you in a way that ultimately led for you to, advance, right? It didn't crush you, and it formed and set you up to be, a Norfolk County resident who has made this town and community better. And so not only that, but you're able to be an influence and a role model to, to your daughters, and to those others around you as well, myself included. And so it's awesome. Keep working hard. But I would encourage you, as I strive to even encourage myself, is like that balance in life is important as well. And, being able to turn off the work ethic and drive sometime to slow down and enjoy, I'm talking to myself here, but for us, especially as we're both endurance athletes, right? And the things we like to do as hobbies and interests and work kind of all collide.
Yeah.
And there's only so many hours in a day. And
it's true. You got to find the balance, right?
Yeah.
And as I get older, that's what I'm searching for more. It's like, how can I find the balance better?
Yeah.
Right? Because you do have to include your family. You do have to think about things greater than yourself.
No, I would say that you do that well. You just got back from Bermuda.
Yep.
Where you went with your wife and your daughters, and each of you, you did a 10K.
I did the 10K, yeah.
The 10-kilometer open ocean swim.
Yep.
And your wife and one of your daughters did 6K?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then Elsa did 800 meters.
800 meters.
Yeah, that's right.
Me and Elsa would get along well.
It was her first 800 meters.
Yeah, we'd be like, Bermuda, I'm not working. What, are you kidding me? 800 meters is more than enough. We'll have a good rest.
We asked her the day before, do you want to train for this? And she said, no.
Do you want to train for it the day before?
The day before. That's right. And she was like, no, I'm good.
I'm good.
That's right. And that's what you expect from a 13-year-old, right? No way.
Perfect.
Training's awful.
Perfect. Good. No, it's good. It's good to, excuse me, bring your family into it, right?
Yeah.
Don't force them in. Bring them in.
Yeah, share the love, right? And I think it's good to be. Nancy and I have always agreed that we show the girls how much we love our sports and our interests and our hobbies, and not hide behind them and not stop doing them because of a family. We just figured out how to do it and fit it all in so that they're never affected, but they're at least can look and go, wow, that's
nice. That's
what we like. And maybe emulate a little bit that hobbies are great and they can be part of your life and not just an obstruction or something, and something that others will be forgotten behind.
Sure.
Right. So
yeah,
I've never wanted to let my interests affect the family.
Yeah.
So,
and that's awesome. I mean, you're teaching your kids and your community, you're teaching them that part of being healthy is taking care of your physical health, right? Preventing some of the things that can come on midlife, later in life, and physical exercise is, I would say, I don't know that there's a better way to deal with other stress in your life than, ironically, putting physical stress in your body. Somehow, all the biochemistry that goes on inside your body, there is something going on in your mind and in your physical body that is allowing other stress to have its rightful place, to be dealt with. And again, physiologically, I couldn't tell you how all this works, but I do know that it works.
Well, how many times have you gone for a run and you've solved all the world problems? And it just in your head, but at the same time, it allows you time to think and maybe think through a problem or discuss it with yourself or discuss it with somebody else or
maybe even the size of that problem or the magnitude of it. You maybe didn't solve it, but it's shrunk a little bit.
It is.
And right. And so I think that, we're physical beings. So we have physical bodies, we're emotional, and we're spiritual, right? So I think when those three things are in balance, I think that people thrive in all areas of life. And so anyway, the idea of bringing your family into that, you're showing them that, taking care of your physical health is important, and to balance it and fit it in your life is good too. And if you're a crazy competitor and you like to compete, if that's your drive, then all the more, the younger you start, the better, right?
Yeah. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with being proud of yourself, right? A little pat on the back. And for Isla to learn that and finishing a 6K open ocean swim, like I said to her when she finished, be really proud of yourself. I'm super proud of you. But more importantly is you should be proud that you just did that. There's not a lot of people that can say that. So pat yourself on the back. You're 15 years old. Way to go.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Good stuff. So back in your story a little bit, high school years, and then off to U of T for architecture. And then what happened from there?
I would love to say it was excellent, but maybe.
I've been an architect for 20 years.
That's right. Maybe university, it's not what happened. And I could sit here and say there's a ton of reasons why it didn't happen. It just wasn't a good fit for me. So got out of that, moved back with my parents, and got involved with the Lone Star Cafe, which is a fairly big restaurant at the time, or emerging restaurant at the time in Mississauga, and sort of went through their sort of training program to become a general manager, and then eventually got my own restaurant at 24 in Richmond Hill.
120 employees, you said?
120 employees, $6 million a year in revenues. Felt pretty good. Learned a ton. Learned a ton about myself. Learned a ton about having to fire someone, having to hire a bunch of people. Speaking in front general meetings of 120 employees and that were older than you, and they're looking at you as the leader, and you have to be strong and forthright and clear with your message. Yeah, again, growing up a ton in a really small amount of time, and leaning a ton again on my dad, daily phone calls to get advice.
Wow. That's amazing that you have that relationship.
That's right, yeah. And You know what? It helped me out and furthered me into maybe like I never, from that experience, go, I could never really work for someone. I kind of want to, and it keeps going where I kind of like being my own boss.
Right. Well, I think you're a leader, right? And leaders are made; they're not born. But I think leadership is also something that it is personality. It is a little bit of. I think there's some nature to it as well, and that some are more have a greater capacity for leadership. And if you thrive in it and do it well, then do it.
Yeah, I think you have to be empathetic towards your employees. Like you have to always think about them and how they feel. As a leader, you're constantly growing. Like there's never ending. Like as soon as you sort of have your ego get involved and say, I'm the best at what I do, then that's it. You stop being a leader. And
so Lone Star Cafe, 6 or 7 years. And I'm thinking there's no swim, bike, run going on during those years. There's probably 10 to 15 hours a day. Now, you sort of wanted to change industry a little bit. 30 years old. So what'd you do?
I think it was pretty abrupt because I was like, I can't do this anymore. And I think I was just probably burnt out at the time and sort of switched gears. And I started thinking about getting back to a great love of the outdoors and being cooped up inside all the time. Maybe that's where it sort of came from. I couldn't tell you. It's been too long now. But anyways, I started looking into the process of becoming a mountain guide. And that sort of led me down the road for the next 10 years of my life, where it eventually lived out west and started taking a bunch of courses out west and getting a few more licenses and getting it further into outdoor adventures with snowboarding in the mountains, and eventually living in Whistler for a number of years and having a lot of fun on the side of a mountain. And again, not making a ton of money, but having a lot of fun and a lot of adventures and learning a ton about myself and others and the wilderness and, just growing as a person.
So before we keep the story going from there, you end up moving to Quebec and then into Ontario. Before we go there, tell me about Scott, the competitor or the athlete, the swim, bike, runner. When did that journey start for you?
I would say once I got here, I was fairly athletic. Like because of my mom, I think that's how I dealt with a lot of my stresses when I was a young kid. Is my dad pushed me into a lot of sports, like signed me up into a lot of sports. And I think that was sort of his way of,
keeping you busy?
Yeah, keeping me busy. So I was right into swimming and football. I played high level football for 8 years, up until I was 18. Not at rep ball in Toronto, which was fairly high level, and then got into rowing, and then from rowing, it was out of the team sports and more into the endurance sports. And I think that's where it came from, is that sort of side. I was like, wow, I'm pretty good at this. I have the capacity to do something for a long time without getting tired. And then you go, well, I can explore that. And as you get older, you get out of that team sport.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you go, well, what's the individual side of it? What can I do? And I think I just got into running one day and I signed up for a marathon. I got into running, and the first thing that I thought of was, I got to sign up for a marathon.
Right. What's the most extreme expression of this I can do?
That's right. And so I did. I went to Iceland and I ran.
What age, Scott?
Oh, it was 2000.
Where in your story here?
Like 2000s, maybe.
Okay.
I signed up with Team Diabetes. So I was in Quebec at the time.
You were in Quebec. Okay, yeah.
And so I thought, I'm going to sign up for a marathon. And I got involved with Team Diabetes. And you had to raise $6,000. And then you would get a free trip to Iceland and run the marathon.
Oh, for the Iceland. Okay, yeah.
That's right. And so I did. I raised the $6,000 through friends and family, and right. And I went to Iceland and ran my marathon. I ran a 3 hours and 31 minutes.
Nice.
For my first marathon. And I was like, well, that's fantastic.
Cool.
Even my brother called me up when I got back, and he was like, oh, that's not too bad.
Not too bad.
And I was like, oh, you should try this yourself.
Very good. For those listeners with no context, a 3.5 hour marathon is, for your first marathon, is excellent. Very well done, Scott. So that, just back into your story a little bit, that was back into, you moved from out west back to Quebec, bit of a change.
Yeah, I was living in Quebec at the time when I decided to do this.
Yeah.
And I think I was exploring a lot about myself. Like I was living in a cabin on the river, Gatineau River, by myself with my golden retriever, and really sort of thinking about what's my next moves. Like where do I see myself going, and where I can set up some roots. And so I started exploring the idea of opening a sports store. Again, strong background in customer service, strong background in leadership, strong background in management, and then a strong background in sports. So, in the love of sports more.
Yep. So there's passion there.
That's right.
Right.
And I kind of always want to do something that I'm passionate about, because it would kind of suck to.
Yeah, it's an intersection of what you love, what you're good at, your experiences in life, right? There you go.
And I've been very fortunate of being able to create something like that in Norfolk County. So anyways, I found out that I can't open a store in Quebec because you have to actually be from Quebec,
sure,
be a resident, and also live there for a long time. So my parents moved to Port Dover, and at the time I was coming back maybe once a year to visit, and they moved to Port Dover. For the first year I came, and I as I was exploring the town, I started thinking, wow, there's a lot of opportunity here. Like a town right on the water for swimming, and then quiet roads, and no one's running around here. Like living in Quebec for 3 years, everybody ran, everybody cycled, and everybody swam.
Wow. So yeah, you were saying that triathlon was sort of Quebec is sort of the triathlon mecca.
It was
Ground
at the
zero
time
in Canada for short course, long course, Olympic athletes. Probably it was and I would still say to this day, they do an Ironman there every year. They're at Mont Tremblant. I've done it. You've done it.
Yeah.
And you guys were there again this year for it.
It was ridiculous. Like there was guys there, like during the Ottawa Marathon, that would ride 90K to get to the marathon, and then run the marathon, and then ride 90K home. And they lived in my town. And all I could think of is like, I want to do that. Like that's the coolest thing.
Nice.
Like how do I get to that level?
Wow. Cool. So you get to Port Dover, and you recognize, hey, this could be an opportunity for a town that could benefit from this thing. You mentioned that there was really no running community, and you described it as 4 men running around in tights or whatever.
Oh yeah, like there was
This is 2007 or so.
2007.
Yep.
For someone to see a person wearing tights in this town was like foreign, like you're from Mars, and I had people come to the store, like when I first opened up, saying, "You'll never make it." Mm. And I thought, oh, you should have, like, thanks for saying that. Like, that's the best thing you could have said to me. Like, wow. I'm going to make it now.
Wow.
Yeah. That kind of negative press that I was getting, or like, there's no way like a running store could make it here. Yeah. Like that was the best thing that said.
Running, endurance sports, it is a niche, right?
It is.
It is a particular flavor. Not everyone's into it. That's fine, right? That's not the point, is that everyone should be. But yeah, so you recognized an opportunity, you started that, and from that sort of was the birth of, a running community here in this town.
Yeah.
North Shore Athletics. And the store generated interest and generated runners, and then the runners generated interest in the store, and you had within Port Dover the development of like this just beautiful relationship between.
Yeah. Then you layer in like, oh, well, like now we're really good at running. Why don't we layer in swimming? And why don't we layer in cycling? Cool. And next thing you know, it started with Nancy and I. We decided to go do some triathlons, and next thing everybody's like, what's a triathlon? Let's try that.
Yeah. Nice.
And then now people are doing Ironmans and continuing on and getting, not just trying an Ironman, like getting really good at Ironman.
Yeah. So in 2003, 4, and 5 is the years that I was into triathlon more competitively, doing the Subaru series in Ontario. And I did about 3 to 4 races a summer, up to the half Ironman distance in Peterborough. And at the time, I could tell you, I don't know anyone else in Norfolk County who was swim, biking, and running. Period.
Yeah.
That was it. I was solo training, Concession 6, south of Boston. My long rides were like, all summer I worked for the city of Brantford in my university days. That was sort of my summer job. And I would ride my bike to work, Boston to Brantford, ride my bike home. And people were like, what planet are you from? Right?
Yeah.
Nice shorts, Johnson. You're going to wear those all day at work? It's like, no, I'm not going to be wearing these, but thanks for the compliment. It wasn't a compliment. It was like, what are you doing? And so I know those days in Norfolk, and the fact that we have this running community, this fitness community now, that is outdoors based and that is social based, that's open and inclusive to like you learn to run. Right? I've never done this before, but this looks great. I need to do it. My doctor's yelling at me. I got to get out here, whatever those external factors are, all the way through to those that are maybe higher level competitors and athletes that want to push to the next level. We have the North Shore Athletics community, the North Shore Cycle, who can help you get your bike in order, and coaching, North Shore Aquatics. Like this is awesome.
And you see a lot of people walking around Port Dover now, or walking around communities, or walking on the trail, or cycling on the trail, or it all stemmed. I can't take credit for any of that, but I can say it's once I opened the store, things have become better. Things have become more apparent. There is more runners. There is more cyclists. There is more walkers. There is more swimmers.
Wonderful. Tell me, shifting gears here a little bit, tell me a little bit about what makes Norfolk County, the place you've decided to call home. Like I know historically the events that you've just shared about, but like, you're here, you could go other places, whatever. There's probably more opportunities, maybe even in bigger urban areas. Like what do you love about Norfolk County and why is it a great place to call home?
For sure, the people, very accepting and also super friendly and non-judgmental and encouraging. And but what I really love is the quiet roads. It
seems to be a trend in the guests I've had so far. The back roads.
Yeah, love.
Tell me about back roads, Scott. There may be listeners in Norfolk County who live in our towns that maybe don't get out, never really gotten out. They stick to Highway 3, Highway 24. Tell me about the back roads in.
All summer, I trained for Ironman Tremblant at the end of August, and I trained pretty much by myself. And so I would get up at 3 a.m. and get ready for a bike ride, leaving at 4:45. And I would leave my house, and I would head out towards St. John's Road, and you take St. John's right to the very end, heading east towards Tilsonburg.
West.
West,
yeah.
And it's just it's pristine, first off, and that's as a cyclist, you're looking for pristine road.
Yes.
But at the same time, it's just so quiet. It's just you and you're pedaling, and it's the sound of your breath and the wind going by you and the sun coming up and the mist on the fields. And you go, you really are, your breath is taken away because of the view, and it just makes the kilometers fade away. And then you head south towards the lake through Port Rowan and then along the lake back into Port Dover for a 90K loop. And you go, wow, that was phenomenal. And all the while you go, there's no way I could get this in Toronto.
Right.
You'd have to drive here.
And you would know because you live there.
Yeah.
That's not
and I just ride out my front door.
Yeah.
And I'm right here. And you go, wow, and it's not just that road. It's wherever you want to go. North, south, east.
Love it.
Yeah.
Port Dover specifically, what do you love about living and being a member in this particular community?
I think walking the dog downtown and everybody's like, hi, 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 hi. Right? Walking at every store and you go, the dog's welcome, I'm welcome. And everybody's like, hey, Scott, how are you? You know what? That's, to me, is a small town. And returning that as well, right? And seeing people and just talking to them and being friendly and open and honest, and right.
You've been in here in Norfolk County then for 15-ish years?
Yeah, 15, 16 years now.
Probably feels like longer than that. But, why is it that you think Norfolk County produces some just top-notch people? What is it about this area? It could be a hard question, right? Because there's a lot of factors involved. But when you think about Norfolk County in particular, what do you think?
I think we, as a group, for some reason or not, the people that got involved with the athletics and with the cycle shop and with Aquatics are just like me. For some reason, they're driven. Maybe it's the adversity of growing up in a small town and having to work a little bit harder, or their work ethic from the farm, or work ethic as they're growing up. I don't know what it is, but they're driven, and they're not satisfied with just the norm. That's, for me, is Norfolk County. And maybe it is the sort of the small townish feel, or I can't really put my finger on it, but that might be it, where it's just I don't know. Again, like you said, it's really hard to put your finger on it, but right. I've been really fortunate to be around some great people that have challenged themselves and pushed themselves pretty far and achieved much in a very short time.
Good. Love it. What's coming up next for you, Scott? Touch on a little bit on some of the endurance things. We just mentioned you are into open water swimming. Huge. That's something you love.
Yeah.
And you're also into all things triathlon, all things running.
Yeah.
What's up next for you? I mean, it's November 2022 as of the date of this podcast, but
so training has already started for, I think the Bay is on my list of the first things for end of March, and then Mississauga Marathon. And then I'm working on a 16K swim from Turkey Point to Port Dover for the summertime. Just a personal challenge. I kind of want to start exploring swims of over 16 to 20K.
Okay.
And see where that goes. I
can tell you where that goes.
A lot of people don't. You either love it or you tolerate it.
Yeah.
It's
an unordinary trait of yours, Scott.
Yeah.
I think it's amazing. I don't quite understand the drive for the repetitive nature of swimming, and it's very different for me than running or biking, because the physical environment literally is identical for that length of time. And so
and you can talk to people.
Yeah, right. There's no social aspect to it. But,
Zero.
But that doesn't discount the value of it. It's just different. Oh, here's a pun. Different strokes for different folks. So you enjoy the swim stroke, and that's all good.
I do. And I think it's because it is so unordinary. Not a lot of people do it. Not a lot of people like it. So maybe I'm drawn to that. It's like, you know what? I'll see if I can grow this a little bit, because what a beautiful lake we have.
Yes.
And why not utilize that all the time? Like, there's so many times that you go for a swim out in the morning and you see the sunrise and you stop and you turn and you look back at the shore and you go, wow, like, I live here. Like, and you see the lighthouse and you go, and I'm 1K out in the lake, and you go, wow, what pretty phenomenal.
Awesome. So you got some athletic events coming up. North Shore Cycle, the business is going good. Love it. Now, you are right now leading a Learn to Run through North Shore Athletics. So if you were to go onto Facebook and looked up the North Shore Athletics group, you'd be able to find information about how to learn to run with Scot Brockbank.
Yep.
And how big is that community right now? I've seen it, been out there a couple Saturday mornings.
35 people signed up.
35 people right now?
Yep. In a 14-week program, we're 8 weeks in.
Okay.
With the ultimate goal of, running 5K consistently, and then hopefully getting them signed up for Around the Bay road race.
Wow.
And doing the 5K or the 10K or the 15 or the 30.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And so if I was someone here in Norfolk County who wanted to, find out more or get involved in that, following in your footsteps a little bit of getting into running or biking or swimming, what can I do?
Go to the Facebook page. Like we utilize Facebook quite a bit. So
like
either
events and upcoming track workouts.
like North Shore Athletics, like a lot of people, it's a very widely used page for information. So if you're looking for clinics, same with, and then from there you can look up North Shore Athletics. You can look up North Shore Cycle, or go to my website, northshorecycle.ca.
Nice.
And lots of information on there.
Yeah, we'll put that information in the description, the episode description, so you'll be able to click on that anytime if you're listening online. Scott, we want to just wrap up the episode here, give you an opportunity to do what I think is one of the things that makes Norfolk County a great place to be, is that there are so many people that have invested, made an investment in the lives of people. And that is something that you are doing right now, and whether or not that's for profit in the sense of a business, or whether or not that's, for pleasure, meaning you're just participating and you're recreating the community, you just happen to be helping people on the way, or if you are volunteering and just giving your time, you are a combination of all three of those things. And so you are an outlet and you give life to other people. And so I want you to think for a moment about who are those people that have played that role in your life. So some of that may not be Norfolk County folks because you grew up, in Mississauga in the GTA, but maybe think a little bit of there in those years. You mentioned to me about your dad, for example, but then also here in Norfolk County in your years that you've been here now, who are some of those people that, along the way have helped or influenced or, supported you along the way and you might want to say thank you to?
Oh, like easily Bill Martin, for sure. Came on board. He was a runner in town, but really didn't have a community himself. And as soon as I opened the store, he came over and introduced himself, and I got involved with Learn to Run, and then Learn to Run as a coach. Theo Vanderlee again, unfortunately passed away years ago, but still like a huge influence on my life. Gail Walker, who continues to thrive and drive personally and professionally within the run community. Don Bonnet, a guy that has zero pain tolerance, but man, does he push himself, and a great inspiration for me, because because he doesn't stop. He just pushes all the time. His brother, Terry, Eric, Darcy, Dan Johnson, Nancy Norton, my wife, again, constantly pushing herself, raising kids, as well as signing up for stupid events with me. Like I say, hey, let's go to Bermuda and do this. And she's like, sure, I'll sign up, and then not having the opportunity to train as much as I do because she's doing other things and raising a family. Like, she's a constant source of inspiration.
It's good to have a lot of people to thank and appreciate.
You know what? And there is a lot of people to thank. Yeah. And there is a lot of people that I look back on that have walked through the door of North Shore. And I've gotten to get to know over the years. And John Rolfe, the first guy that I did a triathlon through the Subaru series with, and we competed the entire way, like head to head, full out, and full ego the entire way.
I've had some conversations with John about Scot Brockbank, and all love, man, all love. But he said, man, we'd go out for our zone 2 or, your endurance run, and it would end in just a full out sprint race to the finish. And you know what? I love following professional triathlon, and the Norwegian train right now, these two athletes, the two best in the world right now are Norwegians, which I have Norwegian heritage, by the way. So I'm pretty much, no, I'm just kidding.
I got a story behind that too.
Yeah. And so these guys, they're number 1 and 2 in the world, and they're training partners. And when they do their speed workout stuff, like their interval training, like their anaerobic or threshold workouts, they push each other, man.
Yeah.
Now they know how to turn it off completely as well. But John was sharing with me about how much that helped him grow and pushed him. And that's good.
Yeah,
good to hear you say that.
The training rides would always start off really relaxed, and by the end of 90K, we were full out. Right. How fast can we go? And same thing with Eric Darcy. I love going out with rides with him, but it's full out the entire time for 120K, and you go. Maybe sometimes it's a great push. It is a great push.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And you go, well, at the time you're like, oh, I'm dying. Why can't we just ride nice and relaxed? But at the end, you're like, wow, that was a great ride. I'm so glad we did that. That's so
cool. Scott, what kind of a mark do you think you left in Norfolk County? You're not going anywhere, but what kind of a mark are you leaving? What kind of an impact are you having? Do you think about that? Do you think about, I love the idea of thinking about legacy, especially if you're in a position of leadership with whether in your work or contributing in the community. It's what's the point? Ultimately, when this is all said and done, and my life's through, it's like what would you want said about you on your gravestone? What would you want said about you in your, as someone shares the eulogy about Scott? Do you think about that about your role here in Norfolk County? And that can be a bit of an intense question, but what do you think about that?
Yeah. that's where you're getting into now. Like I'm tooting my own horn, and I don't want to get into that. But I'll relate that into a story. Like back when I first opened the shop in 2007, Outside Magazine would always list the top 50 cities in North America to live based on recreational activities.
Really?
And I always said I wanted to get Port Dover on the list.
Really?
Yeah. And it's all based on per capita of like recreational, like how athletic is the town with hobbies and interests and things like that. And I think my goal is still to get Port Dover on that list.
Wow.
Say per capita that we're a fairly athletic with great interests, great hobbies. We promote health. We have friendly roads. It's easy to cycle here. We can walk down the street. It's safe. And that's, I think, still my goal.
Wow, interesting. I didn't know such thing like that existed.
Every year. They put out a list, yep.
Wow.
Yeah, and a lot of Canadian cities are in it.
How do they gather that data? That's
the thing is like, I'd have to look at how to get it in there. But that's, I remember reading it going, wow, I would love for Port Dover to be on that list.
Wow. Well, I think, I mean, as we've talked today, like Norfolk County, as you were describing, like the, riding the bike at 5 a.m. and the sunrise and the mist and all that stuff. I think that there is just a beauty here in this county. I think there's a beauty, in all of nature and all of creation here on the earth, but, urban areas, right? Highly, highly developed areas. That natural beauty that at one point was there is not there, right? It's been taken over by architecture, buildings and structures and roads and all that stuff. Fine. But in Norfolk County, any of our small towns, you're about 30 seconds away from being out of town limits and into that beauty of creation.
Yeah.
And I think, that makes whether Port Dover makes the top 50 or not, I think that's an awesome thing about our area. And the total of Norfolk County is filled with that beauty.
The quiet farm roads, it's like pristine. It's beautiful.
Wonderful. Well, Scot Brockbank, you are unordinary, and thank you so much for being on the Norfolk Unordinary podcast. Norfolk County is better to have you here. Continue, man. Stay strong, stay healthy, keep doing what you're doing, keep growing, keep offering new stuff, and let the haters hate.
That's right. Yeah, I'll still continue to wear my tights.
Continue to wear your tights. There you go. And man, it's an honor to be your friend, to train with you, to have coffee with you, and to sit down and learn more about Scott, the boy, how your life was shaped. And for the listener, I truly believe that there is an unordinariness in each and every one of you. And here in Norfolk County, all the more if you're here in this county, you've been the recipient of people who have invested in your lives through different institutions, teachers, faith communities, our business communities and volunteers who have given you opportunity to be unordinary and to pursue things like the way Scott has. And so I encourage you to get out, get unordinary yourself and join into this community and thrive because we have such a blessed region of land to call home. So Scott, again, thanks for being here today.
Thanks, Dan.
And we'll see you around town.
It was great chatting with you.
This episode of Norfolk Unordinary is brought to you by Coco Cabana Chocolate Fudge Gourmet Cafe. Follow them on Facebook and Instagram, 16 Walker Street, Port Dover, Ontario.